Greetings everyone, I am Fauzia and I hope everyone is well and had a good and safe Raya celebration this year. Today we will be focusing on another topic, that is advertising. So before we start, let's go through the outline for this chapter. After studying this chapter, you should be able to first outline the history and development of the advertising industry, then to evaluate contemporary criticism and defense of advertising. Next, you should be able to describe how the organizational and economic nature of the contemporary advertising industry shapes the content of advertising, especially in an increasingly converged media environment. The student should also be able to identify different type of advertising and their goals. And finally, you should be able to explain the relationship between advertising content and its consumers. So good advertising is designed to be extremely influential, memorable, and at times risks. It breaks through the clutter and noise of everyday life. It disrupts the viewer's attention and demands their focus. And advertising can work for companies in a variety of ways, such as to raise awareness for brand, to drive potential customers to the business, to promote for both new and existing product sale, to introduce a new product or service to the market, as well as to differentiate your products from the competitors. Advertising can also be executed in various ways, such as radios and TV commercials, billboards, digital advertising, and social media. All counts as advertising. But first, how does advertising differ from marketing? Marketing is the big picture of how a company plans to raise awareness of their brand and convince customers to make a purchase, while advertising is the process of creating the persuasive messages around these broad goals. Advertising is a subset of marketing, which is the umbrella term for communicating with your audience. So before we go further in this chapter, let's first try to understand the history and development of the advertising in brief. There are some major captures in the history and development of the advertising, as you can see in this slide. The first picture shows the early 18th century, where the tobacco label advertisement by the British, they had already mastered the use of celebrity in their tobacco advertising. And the second image shows an example from 1930s of a hard sell advertisement from Quaker Oats oatmeal. And the third image is Coca-Cola's advertisement in 1940s. And finally, the last image shown in this slide is about today's creative way of advertising, where advertising can be everywhere. Sony creatively hired graffiti artists in several major American cities to spray paint commercials for its PlayStation Portable on walls and buildings. Dear students, to further understand the history and development of the advertising industry in details, you may read your textbook from page 482. In Malaysia, the advertising industry started in the late 70s with the establishment of ASA, or the Advertising Standard Authority Malaysia, in 1977 to provide guideline of self-regulatory system, independent examine advertisement content, and advertising ethical values. Advertising in Malaysia was one source of revenue, mostly run by the media agencies based on commission, where these agencies involved in planning and negotiate for the media space purchasing. In early 19th century, advertising industry, however, still received lack of brand awareness on their ad campaigns. However, starting in year 2000 onwards, advertising industry in Malaysia witnessed the emergence of magazine and national newspaper with advertisement as the main source of revenue, and advertisers started to target their advertisement on niche target market with the availability of various advertising medium such as newspaper, magazine, TV, and radios. And brands were not concerned by consumer in early age, as people are easily persuaded by stunning posters and advertisement. Advertising and its audiences. The typical individual spends more than a year of his or her life just watching television commercials. It is a rare moment when we are not in the audience of some advertisement or commercial. This is one of the many reasons why advertisers have begun to place their messages in many platforms or venues just to draw our attention. However, besides the bright side a company could gain from advertising, it sometimes suffers from various critics by different segments of society. Let's look into 4 main critics on advertising in the next slide. Specific complaints or critics about advertising are that it is often intrusive, deceptive, and in the case of children's advertising, inherently unethical. Advertising is also said to demean or corrupt the culture. Criticism of advertising. Advertising is intrusive. Many critics advertising for its intrusiveness. Advertising is everywhere and it interferes with and alters our experience. Giant wall advertisement, it changed the look of cities. Advertisement beam by laser light into the night skies. This destroy our evening stargazing. School learning aids provided by candy makers asking students to count the candies, and this has altered our education system. Constant commercial diminish the television viewing experience. These intrusive experiences has led to online advertisement blockers installation by consumers just to kill off the digital advertisement. Digital marketing manager of cell site company, she stated that ad blocking is consumers' response. It's their way to say enough of the barrage of unnecessary, unwanted, and irrelevant messages. Criticism of advertising. Advertising is also deceptive. Deceptive advertising, also known as false advertising. This refers to a condition where manufacturers use confusing, misleading, or blatantly untrue statement when promoting a product. By this, customers are swayed and eventually consume the product which irrelevant or useful for them. Advertising is inherently deceptive, in which sometimes promises to improve people's life through the consumption or purchase of a sponsor's product. This is stated by Barron 2013. Criticism of advertising. Advertising exploit. Criticisms of advertising. Advertising demeans and corrupt culture. In our culture, we value beauty, kindness, prestige, family, love, and success. As human beings, we need food, shelter, and the maintenance of species. Advertising succeeds by appealing to these values and needs. According to industry critics, however, problems arise when important aspects of human existence are focused to the consumption of brand name consumer products. Critics argue that ours has become a consumer culture, a culture in which personal worth and identity resides not in ourselves but in the product with which we surround ourselves. The consumer culture is corrupting because it imposes new definitions that serve the advertisers and not the culture on traditionally important aspect of our life. If love, for example, can be bought rather than being something that has to be nurtured, how important can it be? For example, a Tiffany ring will create happier and everlasting relationship. An advertising strategy for stimulating desire and imply that we are inadequate and should not be satisfied with ourselves as we are. For example, that you can see in the slide, the Dove advertisement, which showed a black woman turning into a white woman after using the brand's body wash. Defenses or bright side of advertising. Advertising does sometimes offend and it is often the focus of criticism, but industry defenders argue the followings. First, advertising support our economic system. Without it, new product could not be introduced and developments in other could not be announced. Competitive advertising of new product and businesses powers the engine of our economy, fostering economic growth and creating jobs in many industries. Secondly, people use advertising to gather information before making buying decisions. Thirdly, advertisement revenues make possible the free mass media we use not only for entertainment but also for the maintenance of our democracy. And finally, by showing us the bounty of our capitalistic, free enterprise society, advertising increases national productivity and improve the standard of living as people actually acquire more of these products. We are now in the scope and nature of the advertising industry. The organizational and economic nature of the modern advertising industry shapes the content of advertising, especially in an increasingly converged media environment. The goal of any advertising is ultimately to initiate action for monetary return, to maximize impact and audience reach. Therefore, advertisements are tuned to be relevant to the customers. Given advancing technology, shift in consumer consumption patterns and lifestyle, the platform for communication are apparently becoming more complex. Hence, today's market illustrates advertising to be radically different from that of past years, where new means and ways, coupled with innovative ideas, have not only transformed traditional media advertising, but have also transcended to the new media to gain better reach of the audience.